Welcome to Escoffier Online. This is Chef Thomas today at 9:30 with plate presentation. I talk a little bit about the plating layout, food selections and so forth. So the very basics of plate presentation. We got a lot of students, they ask us all the time, so Chef Thomas, how can I do this better, or is this appropriate? So we're going to talk about all those little nuances you need to think about for plate presentation. A little bit later, I'm also going to show you a little demo about the saucing of plates. Very basic things again, but just something very simple you can actually make notes about, and also then really apply it to all your plates, even for our assignments. I also want to remind you that we have a couple more days left for our raffle, so you better get your assignments in, and hope you're going to win this fantastic professional KitchenAid mixer. So let's get going. First things, if you want to write these things down, that would be great. I give you the basics now for plate presentation. Every chef starts with a lot of research for the plates, and I have behind me a bunch of books. This goes from Working the Plate to the Escoffier cookbook to Simple to Spectacular and Garde Manger books. There's many books that take a lot of time to explain proper plate presentation. So what are the basics which you can pull out of almost every single book, besides beautiful pictures as well? So here are the basics. First of all, you have to think about which kind of food you're actually selecting. So what's actually on your plate? With this food selection, meaning maybe it's a recipe, maybe it's something a caterer you want to do as a caterer, maybe it's something you have on the menu for your customers. So you have to first look at your food selection. With the food selection, you're going to look at cooking methods. Do you have all cooking methods represented in these food selections? Do you have grilling? What does grill marks do? Grill marks make a nice brown color, nice even lines. How about steaming? Steaming keeps the product very fresh and crisp, bright colors. How about sauteing? Sauteing brings a nice caramelization on most of the proteins. It also caramelizes fruits and vegetables. So boiling keeps the product very bland, same color as it is. So there's a different cooking methods with the food products which can actually influence how this product is going to look like on your plate. So this is the first step. What is your dish? What is the product? And what are the cooking methods? So what you want to avoid is a plate where you have grilled asparagus with a grilled salmon steak with grilled potatoes. You would have a vegetable, a starch, and protein, but it would be all the same techniques, meaning very similar color palettes there. Okay, next thing, after I think about the food selection and the cooking methods, I'm also looking at color, shape, texture. So the color, shape, and the texture of those food items. Think about asparagus, long and green, very crisp. Think about a potato, maybe it's a boiled potato, it's very soft, it's brown. If it's a red potato, maybe it has some red in there. So we can also cut protein in different shapes. We can do chicken strips, we can do pork chops, we can do pork loins and cut them in little salpicons, little steaks. So there's different shapes we can think of. Think about pasta and rice and mashed potatoes or mashed anything. Items you can actually shape to make different forms on your plates. You can put them in a coffee cup, or you can put them in a timbale. You can put them in a water glass and form them in a little oval ring, maybe in a teardrop-shaped ring. So there's so many different things you can think about shape and texture. Now texture is something which we can apply also with cooking methods. Remember when I talked about the grilling and the sauteing. But other than that, which other ways can we add texture? Well, with the dish itself, right? So with the product, we have maybe a salsa which is very chunky. We have maybe a smooth sauce. We have something crisp on top as garnish. So there's so many different ways we can add texture to the plate. Very important for the layout of the whole plate is that we achieve balance. Balance is something very important on a plate. We have a big plate. We don't want to have the food sitting all over the place. We want to have it centralized in the middle of the plate, meaning a balanced center. It would always be good to also create height in a plate. That means I want to layer things. Maybe the potatoes and the vegetables grouped together and then the protein leaning on them. So we want to create balance and centering on the plate, but we also want to produce height. That does not mean I just throw stuff together on a big pile. That works for some dishes, but not for all. But we want to layer. And layering is a very, very important factor in our business. Now, under all these things, the food selection, the layout, balancing the plate, the color, cooking methods, the shape and the texture, one thing strikes me as most important is, of course, the seasoning. You can make the most wonderful plate there. If it doesn't taste well, if it doesn't smell good, you won't sell it. So never ever forget that seasoning is a big part of plate presentation as well. Doesn't mean I have to see the salt and I have to see the pepper, but you definitely have a big contribution to the overall look of the plate if it's seasoned well. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about layout and the balance and how the flow of lines goes. So I'm going to take a plate here and actually show you this, what I mean. I made some raspberry sauce. So a strong line would actually be something like, which has some curve. Why this works is because our eye actually follows this curve. These are actually considered strong lines. Weak lines are actually lines, they go straight. So that would be something like this. That's actually a weak line here, right next to it. A straight line is a weak line. It's kind of odd to think about, but if you really think how your eye goes, our eye actually follows the red line with the dots more than the straight line. So this is what the difference is between sauce uses for strong and weak lines. So I have brought a couple pictures in also for the saucing technique, and the first one is actually the mirror technique for a steak. And what a mirror does is, a mirror is actually sauce all around the bottom of the mirror of the plate. So we put maybe 2 ounces of sauce on there, and then we kind of move the plate around and have that sauce go over the bottom of the plate. We then put the product on top. In this case, it's a steak, the garnish on top. And this makes a very nice presentation. This almost looks like it's gelatinized sauce, but I can assure you this is actually a nice, probably a demi-glace. So the next picture, we're talking about drizzling. This would be a rack of lamb with some with a starch right next to it, and the plate looks kind of messy, but this is also a style a lot of chefs love, is just drizzling the plate. This might be a balsamic reduction, and to show, kind of to focus the eye back to the starch and to the rack of lamb. Another way to drizzle is also for baking and pastry students. There's a picture with the chocolate and raspberry. I think it was a cheesecake. Oh, this one, sorry. Yeah, this one. That is actually just a drizzle on the plate. Again, looks very messy, but if you think about putting a plain piece of cheesecake right on top of it, this is actually going to show tremendously up from that plate. Now, a lot of restaurants have white plates, so a little bit of color on the bottom of the plate does always a wonder to the food. Now, the next picture we have here is actually how to sauce. There's a picture of steak where the chef holds actually a pot. Now, this is a very common thing chefs do. They have the sauce pot right next to it. They use a spoon. Other techniques would be to put it actually in a little creamer container, or even I've seen chefs use, especially at competitions and on hotlines, thermos, like coffee thermos, where they pour the sauce right onto the plate. This is a very common thing to do, where you just basically make a line around the food after it's plated. So this would be saucing after it's plated. The last picture here now is a swirl on a salad. So we have covered pretty much every single menu item here. So we went from a little bit from steaks to lamb to desserts, and now to the salad. But the salad has a really nice color already, and we see here that that very simple drizzle on the bottom again. Again, it was first dressed, and then it was plated. So don't forget that you have to kind of think of what comes first, the sauce or your product, because otherwise it's not going to look as pretty. Okay, so I want to show you now how this is actually done a little bit more in detail. We're going to talk about tools here, and the most simple tools are squeeze bottles. And these squeeze bottles, you can buy them right now at the grocery store. You can actually use them for ketchup and mustard, they're most commonly known. The nice thing about these squeeze bottles are actually the tips can be cut in different sizes. So I can keep them rather thin for very smooth strained sauces, maybe even ganache to pipe over cookies or onto a plate. And then I can also cut it much bigger for maybe plating a plate with a puddle or with a mirror full of sauce. So these are really awesome because I can also take them apart and clean them very well. For those of you who work in the industry, make sure that these always get cleaned every single day. There should be plastic on top and covered so that there's nothing going in there. This is actually a little bit more fancy. This actually has a holder for the cap so that when you pipe, it doesn't fall in to your piping. So very good. Other tools you can actually also get are little pipettes. This is for something very delicate. Those are really small pipettes. You can actually get those at hobby stores. Here in Illinois, it's like Hobby Lobby and Joann's. They have those plenty. What they do is they hold maybe an ounce of liquid, and they're very, very small for very petite plating. So after the tools, now we're going to go to show you a little bit how this actually also works in real life. I have a plate here, and we're going to do something like the drizzle we saw before, right? We have a mango sauce here. So I'm going to cap it. I'm going to shake it up good. This one is a little bit thicker, so my lines are going to be very strong. And I have a little bit of raspberry sauce. This one is rather thin. So I can generate with a thinner and a thicker sauce effects like where I can let it run towards it. And the thicker sauce actually makes a nice barrier. Shaking always works. It actually smoothens out the sauce. So that would be a very strong line. We have a very strong yellow line. There's not a lot of foo-foo around it. So another way to do this, the drizzle was very, very impressive, right? But drizzle actually really just works like this. And that's pretty much it. So this sauce is very thin, so therefore we have a lot more run-ins. But now just imagine I turn this plate around, just put some chocolate over it. That is really a drizzle. Now again, this works really well when I do it first and then plate the product on top. If the product is already on there and I do a drizzle, then the sauce is going to go all over the place. All right. We also can do plate drawings, especially with a thicker sauce like the mango sauce. This works really well. Let's say we have a dessert coming up. And now we have a teardrop shape. Now if I want to go again crazy with color, I can actually fill it in. I want to be careful to not too much. So we actually can border all kinds of different colors and make this stand out then. So this sauce would stand out and we have the dessert right here. So this works very well as well. Okay, then the last thing I want to show you, especially on big plates or round plates like this, is when you produce little dots. You probably have seen this. It's very, very easy. So all I have to do is put a little pressure on there. Stay right where I put the dot in first. Don't move around. Then gradually make the dot go smaller and smaller. Very, very simple, very beautiful. Again, it could be a salad right here. It could be a little amuse-bouche, a greeting from the kitchen. So very different techniques for sauces. Now, how does this impact actually our plates? And I have here 2 more pictures for you of the same product. This is actually a cheesecake. And we have one cheesecake which has dots and one which has drizzle. So the dots here are made with a spoon. This seems to be caramel sauce. Very clean cut, very beautiful. I always prefer a squeeze bottle. It's a little bit easier to handle. And then the second picture for the same cheesecake is a drizzle. And the drizzle cheesecake, do we still have that? Okay, so here's the cheesecake which is drizzled. So we have the cheesecake with the, it could be a blueberry sauce reduced, could also be a little bit of balsamic vinegar. That works actually really well for cheesecakes. And this is not a big difference. This was drizzled over the product. So for some people that looks messy, for others that is really the art of beautiful plating. So with that said, the tools are very simple, very cheap. The squeeze bottles you can get almost everywhere in the stores. I can also order the small pipettes for very intricate plating, which is usually not so unnecessary unless you go maybe for a culinary competition. Sauce making itself, very, very simple. We have ganache recipes in the baking pastry program. We have the demi-glace in our culinary program. So there's already some sauces, some principles in our programs. Just follow those. The sauces don't have to be piping hot when you pipe them, when you plate them, obviously. There's other techniques how you can keep that hot. Now, play around with the plating presentation itself. Think about those couple items I've told you at the beginning. Food selection, very important. The layout, the balance. And then you have the color, shape, texture, the cooking methods you're going to be applying to, and last but not least, the seasoning. If you have any questions, please feel free to always call us or email us. Play around with those small bits of information. The saucing is definitely one thing I would like to see more on student plates. And if you have any questions, please email us and call us as always.